This, my friends, is the Tom Rhodes radio show program. Karate kick, baby. Jesus, I believe it as a donkey dick. Yo, shalom, amigos y amigas. Hey, what time is it? It's Radio Smart Camp time. Oh, hey! I shit the bed.
Tommy, you're the man. That's right. I know you want this.
Oh, yeah.
I know you like it.
Oh, hey!
Power to the people. That's right. That's right.
Pay attention, please.
Knowledge is power. I love you, Tommy.
Hello, friends, and welcome to Tom Rhodes Radio Smart Camp. Hooray and hallelujah. First of all, I want to thank Udo, my man from Germany who lives in Missoula, Montana, for making that wonderful new intro song for me. Did it bring joy to your heart? It certainly brought joy to mine. And I want to thank Udo for driving all the way from Missoula to Portland to see me 2 weeks ago in Portland. I was in Portland, and then last week I was in Seattle, and I want to thank everybody who came out and saw me. The color burst of autumn leaves was true beauty that my eyes will not soon forget. And I eat seafood every day in Seattle. I could eat seafood only for the rest of my life forever. I have a friend in Florida who owns a boat, and nothing holds a friendship together like a boat. I mean, I remember that guy's birthday. I remember him at Christmas every year, just so those boat invitations keep coming. Ha, 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 ha. That's a joke, because I don't live in Florida. But my friend with a boat is a true Florida fisherman guy. And it's good to have a friend that knows the sea and sea life and all these things. We were in Key West a few years ago together, and my friend Kevin was lobster fishing. And when he would catch a lobster, he would snap off the antenna and clean out the lobster's asshole with the antenna. And he said that was the best way to clean the poop out of the lobster's poop tube. Wouldn't that suck? I mean, you know you're about to die, and then someone rips your arm off and cleans out your asshole with it. That's got to be pretty humiliating, but do lobsters have consciousness? We don't even know. Yeah, there's a lot of things, a few things I want to talk to you about before we kick in with today's interview. But number one is Twitter. My friend Joe DeRosa, who's been on this show, he just wrote an article. I read it yesterday. And it was about how he had quit Twitter, basically because, it was supposed to be civilized conversations and people interacting with each other, and he just experienced hate. And I've said many times, I think Twitter is kind of like a hate faucet. You go on there and it's just so much hate and negativity and frustration from people. And so I experienced a minor shitstorm this past week because I went on the Kill Tony podcast, which is great. Kill Tony's an awesome program with Tony Hinchcliffe, and it's like an open mic night, and comedians go on there, young comedians, and then you're a panel of the veteran comedians, ask them questions and comment on what they just did. So I was on this podcast, and it's a podcast for comedians, put on by a comedian, and I'm a comedian, so I felt the need to talk about the new movie, The Joker. And all these people got so pissed off because I gave away the surprise ending. And if, I hate the term spoiler alert. I hate when people say that. It's like, why can't we talk about movies and books or records? Why, do we have to wait? I mean, the movie The Joker has grossed $277 million the last I saw. It's probably over 300 million now. And, how long do we have to wait before we can talk about things. I mean, does every loser who lives in his mom's basement, we have to wait for them to find the coins under couch cushions and see the film before we can talk about it? I don't have a problem with people. It's interesting because I think like a year or two, this really would have bothered me. People writing so many shitty things about me on Twitter, but it kind of didn't bother me because um, I feel justified in talking about that movie because the Joker, if you haven't seen it, the story is basically this. Well, first of all, I didn't like the Joker because I thought it leaned a little too heavy on the mental health issue, where Joaquin Phoenix plays the Joker, and he's crazy. He's not like the fun crazy. The guy's like disturbed mentally. And my image of the Joker was like Jack Nicholson, smooth and debonair, and also like very witty and intelligent. And I didn't like the fact that it was a shitty open mic night comedian. Why couldn't it be like a brilliant comedian like me, or Bill Hicks, or like a George Carlin type of person who really defeated and owned people with their intelligence and their wit? So the movie is about a shitty open mic night comedian who kills a more famous, successful, funny comedian, played by Robert De Niro. He played like a Johnny Carson TV guy. And so that's the big surprise ending. And it's a brutal murder. He goes on the show and then he pulls out a gun and he shoots the funny, famous comedian point blank in the head. And, I don't mind violence, and I'm entertained by all of the Quentin Tarantino movies, but I just thought that was just a shitty message. But I mean, I will recognize that the movie was art, and it was powerful art because it got such a strong reaction out of me. And also, Joaquin Phoenix's his acting is spellbinding. The guy is incredible. He's one of the greatest actors of our generation. And also, the film also employed a lot of comedian friends of mine. Greer Barnes is in it. Mark Maron is in it. I think there were two other comedians. I mean, the whole movie, I was like, wow, there's another comedian friend of mine. There's another comedian friend of mine. So I did like the film for the acting and the fact that there were a lot of comedians in it, but I just didn't like the story because it's like a shitty open mic night comedian, and that's not my idea of the Joker. The Joker is a character that, I love because the guy makes jokes. But, the reactions that I've got were so angry and so negative. Number one, like the asshole in me wants to now see every shitty superhero movie and ruin the end for people. For people who don't know that every superhero movie ends the same way. I mean, they don't all end with a point blank murder of someone being shot in the head, but superhero movies are all basically the same. And that's cool. They're dominating our cinemas and movie theaters and things. But since I'm only partially an asshole, what I think I would like to do secretly, well, now you know, is to write my own better version of the Joker, of what I wish that movie would have been, which would have been a badass, brilliant comedian commenting on society, and for whatever reason, he's chosen to go against Batman. So I knew there would be a backlash by the reaction that people had when I was doing Kill Tony. I had done Kill Tony once before, and I didn't feel like I said enough. This time I went there ready to talk, and I thought I got off some great lines and good questions for the young comedians, and I complimented the people I liked. And then someone mentioned this movie, The Joker, and I felt like, hey, I'm going to give my opinion on it. And, who knew? Well, I mean, maybe it's not that many people. Maybe just in, the Twitterverse. I hate that word too. The hate faucet is more accurate. So let me I'll just read you some of the reactions that I got. This guy Joker got. Obviously, this guy's a troll, and he tells me later he's a troll. But apparently, he just started this Twitter account just to fuck with me. So here we go. Tom Rhodes, fuck you for ruining the Joker, you fucking scumbag. That was one of the most boring Kill Tony shows that your low energy ass. His English isn't even good. You some sort of rat? How the fuck you get on that show with your 14,000 followers? You bum. Okay, so I wrote the guy back, I forget, but I was ban Tom Rhodes for spoiling shit. That's what Frank, that tank, yeah, who cares? Boop. You know, I try not to fuck with Twitter too much, and it was. Oh, so here's an unrelated one. This guy, Merton Futon. Oh my God, I can't believe you're giving out people's real Twitter things on podcasts. Okay, so here he's talking about the podcast. Great podcasts, especially ones in cool foreign places. Minor point, Mongolian yurts are gurs. You use gur religiously. Yeah, what's wrong with calling a gur a gur? Paris has Rue Montegoyle, pronounced Rue Montegoy. You repeatedly hear it said right, but keep brashly using the phonetic Montegoy. Why? And I just tweeted back to this guy, I'll try harder. I mean, what can you say? I mean, I don't know how to speak. I lived in Amsterdam for 5 years. I can't speak of too much Dutch. Yeah. Yeah, so a lot of people wrote all this stuff. And then some people came to my defense. Tom, you need to spoil more movies. Anyway, it was, it's not that big of a deal. But, it's funny. I've been thinking lately about getting off of Twitter. And then after this kind of shitstorm, which I think would have really hurt my feelings a year or two ago, I really found great amusement in it. Oh, and then that Joker guy, I should keep scrolling. I wrote him back something nice. And then he just wrote back, you have a small PP. And I wrote him back and I said, just for the record, I have a medium PP. And my medium number of Twitter followers, those are nothing to be ashamed of. I'm grateful for my 14,000 followers. And I know my podcast listeners, I don't have like thousands and thousands of listeners, but I'm grateful for everyone. And, I know I always thank the golden Buddhas, but I want to thank the $10 people and the $5 people too. I mean, that's just as important. And I really love when people who listen to my podcast come out to the show and meet me. And, I wish I was more famous. I wish I had more money in the bank. And I wish I didn't have to look at Twitter ever. But, I'm grateful for what I have. I got a great life. And I think the people who support me are beautiful human beings. So anyway, I'm really proud of myself for not getting my feelings hurt. So no, so that's what I said to the guy. The Joker guy, that was the first thing I wrote to him. Here we go. I wrote I'm just trying to keep it charming and funny. So that first tweet where he, called me a fucking scumbag and I only got 14,000 followers, I said, coming from someone with 5 followers, that's hilarious. You made my day. Thanks for the laugh. And then he writes back, I may have 5 followers, but at least I don't have a small PP. Brilliant, huh? And then that's when I said the thing about I'm nothing to be ashamed of. Yeah, and then people, Tom, you were wrong about it being a shitty movie, but I'm so glad you ruined it for those losers. Your album Around the World is great, better than the Joker. That was nice. Um, anyway, instead of getting off of Twitter, I have decided to stay on Twitter, and I'm going to just smother people with love. When people write shitty things to me, I'm just going to stay cheerful and write back. Like one guy wrote something. I was going there, on there today. Fuck these haters, Tom. You've accomplished and done more than all of these fucking losers ever will do. So it's nice, man. Some people, write some nice defenses of me. And here's the Joker again. First of all, I'm not trying to impersonate the Joker. I'm just an internet troll. Second of all, the Joker movie wasn't bad. It was a fucking think piece. So clearly you are not capable of thinking. Yeah, I told him thinking is beyond my capacity, and I often run into walls. And I said, Jesus loves us all. And I hope goodness and mercy comes into your life, something like that. It was like an hour or so ago. So anyway, I'm not getting off Twitter. I'm staying on there. And if anybody writes anything shitty, I'm just gonna come back at them with love. But Twitter's not my favorite thing on the internet. Making my own podcast brings me joy. And I think that's pretty much it on this little, yeah, all right. Joker's arc. If it makes you feel better, what actually happens is subject to interpretation. Mr. Rhodes just gave one interpretation. Go see it. Yeah, you know what? And like I said, the movie was art. It was powerful, and it got a strong reaction out of me, and I'll probably go see it again while it's in the theaters. Oh, then Mr. Tickles said, personally, I loved it when you did that. People that require spoiler alerts need to just go see the movie. People have a right to discuss things that have been publicly released. Thank you, Mr. Tickles. That was my opinion. And anyway, a lot of people wrote really nice things. Spoiling the film is risky, and you need to be prepared and own any backlash. But anything over a week is fair game, really. So, and then Kimberly, Tom Rhodes is one of the good guys. He is who he is, and it comes at people with an open heart. Been a fan from the beginning of his career, and he has only gotten more down to earth as the years go by. And you know what I did to all the people who defended me and said nice things about me? I followed them back, because that's the nice thing to do. Anyway, I mean, there's worse things that have happened to people, and this really didn't bother me at all. I just thought it was funny that it got such a strong reaction, and that a certain amount of people are pissed off at me. But not everybody's going to like you in the world, in your life, in your family, in your job, wherever. There's always some prickly, cantankerous assholes that you have to navigate in this life. So I just thought I'd share that with you. Oh, and then this one guy, he had written some stuff, and then I came back at him really super friendly, and he said, no sweat at all. Forget it, Tom. It's Twitter. By the way, I loved the Kevin Masters show when I lived in the Netherlands. And then he sent a little, forget it, Jake. It's Chinatown. Anyway, I love you guys. Today's episode is with James Inman. I hope I didn't, I guess I do hope I ruined the Joker for you. I thought it should have been a better story. But apparently, I've ruined the Joker for some of the people who haven't seen it yet. Today's interview is with James Inman. When I first started going on the road when I was really young, in my 20s, I did Kansas City a lot. Kansas City was a place that would have me 2 or 3 times a year, and then I also did a lot of one-nighters in Kansas and Missouri in those early years. And I worked with James Inman a lot, and I always thought he was a nice guy. I was in Kansas City last month, and oh my God, I forgot what a great city Kansas City is. There's a new club there called the Kansas City Comedy Club, or Comedy Club of Kansas City, something in that neighborhood. And the art museum in Kansas City is amazing. The barbecue beef brisket. I want to thank Kristen, my listener from Waco, Texas. Kristen drove all the way to Kansas City to see me. And then I forget what happened, but I didn't have time to eat dinner. And I had 2 shows that night. She came to the first show, and I was talking to her after the show. And then she ran to this barbecue place and brought me back a beef brisket. And I was starving, and it was delicious. And I can't thank you enough, Kristen. And James Inman is this comedian from Kansas City that I worked with a lot. And, you know, he's hung around Doug Stanhope a lot, and he was in the Unbookables. He wrote a book called The Greyhound Diaries about taking the Greyhound bus, which I can relate to because I used to take Greyhound everywhere when I first started being a comedian, and that was more painful than Twitter could ever be. But James Inman told me that Bill Hicks often appears to him in dreams. And Bill Hicks is one of my all-time comedy heroes. I wish the Joker in the Joker movie would have been more patterned after someone like Bill Hicks. And I was really excited to hear James Inman tell me about how Bill Hicks appears to him in dreams and what revelations he might have delivered to him. So I hope you guys are doing great wherever you are in the world. Remember, shitty words are just shitty words, and somebody loves you somewhere, and that somebody is me. And you know, keep on trucking, baby. And it is my pleasure to present to you now the one and only James Inman. James Inman, ladies and gentlemen, James Inman. How are you, brother?
Fine.
Fine. So what you said, it goes crazy when you do Stanhope's podcast. What do you mean by crazy?
Oh, well, we always argue, and so we're like polar opposites. I mean, I've known him for so long that, you know,
You can be kind of his whipping boy, right?
Well, yeah, he does do that to me, but I mean, that's the problem. It's like, I've known him since, like, I think I met him in, like, 1996 or 7, you know, back at the Vail Comedy Invitational, and then I met him at the San Francisco Comedy Competition. So we've always had this relationship, but then when Doug got famous, he had all these people around him, but Doug has always made fun of me, and it's just been like a Laurel and Hardy thing, like a, you know what I mean?
Well, I remember that that desert party.
Right.
I went to the one desert party, and so apparently every year...
Right.
So Doug would have this party in Death Valley,
Uh-huh.
and it was like in August or something. It was in the, you know, I remember it was in the hundreds when I was
Right,
there.
uh-huh.
It was ungodly hot. I didn't have a hotel room. I slept in Paul Preventa's car.
Right, right.
Because I went at the last minute.
Uh-huh.
And it was like, I mean, I only slept for like an hour a night because it was
Right.
so fucking hot
Yeah.
in the desert. And it was just drinking and drugs.
Yeah.
And, you know, the Matoid,
Yeah, uh-huh.
the band played,
Uh-huh.
which was great.
Yeah.
But so every year, Doug crowns like a king of the of the desert party.
Uh-huh.
And then you had been the previous year's king.
Oh, you were there the
And
year
then
after. Okay, all
He
right.
stripped you of your king title
and gave it to the dog
at the party,
Right.
and gave it to the dog.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's just Doug. That's how he always did. Because see, right around the time when we met, I was living in Seattle, and I was my girlfriend was a socialist, and so I was hanging out with all these socialists. So I meet Doug, and right around that time, in 1997 or something, he starts getting into libertarianism. So we were like always clashing about politics. So after I won the king of the party, I get on stage and I go, okay, you guys just elected a communist king of the party. And, you know, and there's going to be some changes around here, you know, because everyone's a big libertarian. The whole, you know, they're all Doug's friends, and I just do it as a joke, you know. But I mean, Brian was a big libertarian, so right when I said you just elected a communist as your king, as the party, so I'm going to make some changes, right? It's going to be.
But socialism is different than communism.
I know, it's just, but they call it.
I know.
You know,
I often
right.
make the same
they call
verbal mistake myself.
Anybody that's a Democrat is a commie. You know. So anyway.
I understand.
And so then, just chaos ensued. Were you the year when the piss fight broke out?
No, thank God I was not there the year the piss fight broke out. But everybody, I thought it was kind of, and I have to admit, and I want to start out this podcast with apologizing to you.
Why?
Because, there's so much drugs and drinking and kind of Lord of the Flies mentality at this party. And you had been stripped of your title. You go up to the microphone. You're drunk. You're rambling. And everybody's yelling at you, and everybody was throwing things at you. I was standing next to a garbage can full of tennis balls. It was filled to the top with tennis balls.
Yeah.
And I was always very good at baseball. And I started throwing tennis balls at you, and I think, and I was aiming for your head, and I bounced about
a tennis ball off my head.
I bounced about 5 or 6
tennis
balls off of your forehead
yeah.
as you were speaking. And
well, I mean, see, that doesn't bother me. And
so
you feel like a bully.
In the drunken glee of the moment, I thought it was hilarious, but my nicer instincts, I'm ashamed of it, and I apologize to you.
Yeah, see, thank you.
Because everyone teamed up on you.
Thank you.
And I was a part of it.
Everyone does kind of bully me. I mean, I'm part of that whole thing too because I choose to hang out. Like before I was friends with Doug, my best friend was Brad Nelson, and he always made fun of me. My sister always made fun of me. My parents always made fun of me. So I've always been drawn to people that make fun of me, but they have to be good at it. They can't just keep saying the same thing over and over again, So when I hooked up with Doug, I mean, he was good at making fun of me, and it was funny. So then, but the problem started when all of his friends started making fun of me. So I've got this whole mass of Doug Stanhope followers, friends, and comics, and they all just think that's what you're supposed to do. And after a while, I just get tired of it. I'm like, and then it starts sounding like it's bullying after a while. I'm like, just shut up. I'm tired of hearing it,
Yeah,
But it is funny. That's why it works so well on his podcast. Most people that go on his podcast just kiss his ass because they think he's brilliant. But I was like, I knew him when he was doing dick jokes. So I mean, it's like, you know what I mean? Like we worked together I worked with you when you had long hair.
Well, I want to talk to you about what do you remember about those days. But I just want to state clearly and sincerely, I'm sorry that I bounced 5 or 6 tennis balls off of your forehead.
I don't even remember that. Dude.
I never could have brought it up. Like people have come up to me and apologized for things in the past, and I was like, I have no memory of that.
Well, see, one of the things that I do remember, because we were all tripping and drunk and high, but after the piss fight broke out, after the communist takeover, when Brian said we're going to do a coup, which was hilarious, and they do the coup, they crowned the dog. After the party was breaking up, me and Doug were walking together. I was just sitting there. I said to Doug, I go, that was the funnest fucking thing I've ever done in my life. Just being around all those funny comedians, and Brian is funny, and Doug is funny. Just the whole idea of the coup was hilarious.
Yeah. So, I think we might have even worked together before I had long hair.
We worked together twice.
Because I used to play the first 10 years of my career when I first started going on the road. Kansas City was really good to me.
Yeah.
I was like an MC.
Yeah.
And, I did Stanford's in Westport like twice a year. And then I did all of these. I might have been the middle act. But I did all these one-nighters around Kansas and Missouri. That was like my...
You worked for Tim Nass?
And Nebraska, yeah.
Tim Nass. He
was the guy out of South Dakota, right?
No, Tim Nass was a little booking agent here in Kansas City. And he booked stuff around this
One-nighters
area.
everywhere. Yeah, I must have.
Yeah, you know his name. Everyone knew his name.
I did. I always remember Lawrence, Kansas, and Manhattan, Kansas.
Yeah, right.
Two college towns.
Yeah.
I was young, and there was always like pretty college girls. To
See,
kiss.
I worked with you once. You were headlining in Olathe, Kansas, and I opened for you, and that's when I first saw you. And you had long hair then. Then we worked again once on the road, and I remember that because you told me, I mentioned something about, you mentioned a book on the road, and I was like, what's that? And you go, it's Jack Kerouac. You've never read On the Road? And I think you either gave me the book or you told me to read On the Road, and you go, by the way, I have some whippets in my hotel room, and I'm like, I want to try one or something. I knocked on your door. You said you had some whippets. Give me a whippet, And so,
I was all about drugs and experience, traveling, and On the Road was my Bible when I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
I just wanted to experience things, kiss girls, achieve higher planes of love and understanding.
That book actually led me to Big Sur, and then it led me to Tristessa, and then I think I read...
I never read
Notes
Tristessa.
Notes from the Underground. Well, it's about his affair with a prostitute in Mexico. And it's almost like every one of his books is written on a particular drug. Like On the Road was written on speed, methadone. Not Notes from the Underground. There was a book he wrote about the Underground that was written while he was high, smoking pot all the time. But Tristessa was written while he was drunk all the time. And so it's almost, and Big Sur was written when he was coming down off of like a huge hangover. So it's one of the most depressing books, but I've never read like Dr. Sachs or any of those. The guy who really I was blown away by was The Tropic of Cancer, Henry Miller.
I love Henry Miller.
Yeah, because just, he starts talking about Taoism, and at the time I was studying Taoism, and it's just like, it made so much sense because he wrote so naturally. It just was so easy to read because he just wrote without stopping, without thinking.
Have you ever read Sexus, Nexus, and Plexus?
No, I haven't.
That's the Rosy Crucifixion, and these three books that go together. And
Henry Miller?
Yeah, it's called the Rosy Crucifixion Trilogy.
Right.
I love Henry Miller. What's the book he wrote on Air Conditioned Jungle? Or no, I'm sorry, Air Conditioned Nightmare. And then he wrote another, The Colossus of Marusi.
I've seen that one.
On his time in Greece. I'm a huge... And Tropic of Cancer, which is his most famous book that they had the big obscenity trial about.
Right.
I don't think it's his best book. But I love Henry Miller because he'll talk about his dick for what he did with his dick for 10 pages, and then he'll say the most earth-shattering, profound, truth.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Now we're starting to talk about books because I know you love to read. Because I used to watch on Facebook. You used to have a thing called
Knowledge Nuggets.
Yes, Knowledge Nuggets. I used to watch all of those. I was like, oh man, I got an idea for you. I wanted you to do a knowledge nugget on MK Ultra, but
what's that?
Right, I think I sent you MK Ultra was a secret CIA program that they found out about because somebody accidentally found the documents, and basically it was the CIA trying to figure out how to create a Manchurian candidate or understand mind control, because the Koreans had some soldiers they captured that said, hey, they got them basically to say whatever they wanted. There's a movie out with Frank Sinatra called Manchurian Candidate.
Yeah.
Right. But then there's a book by John Marks, called The Search for the Manchurian Candidate, which is a good book. It was the first good book to come out on that subject. And it's around that time, the late 50s, and then, of course, the 60s, LSD got into the black market in the public, and the hippies got hold of it. And then by the time you get to, what's his name? Fucking Helter Skelter, and Charles Manson, that's when, the whole hippie movement ended right there, 1969, I think, is when, after that happened, people were like, that's who the hippies are?
Yeah.
They'll
kill you.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I just finished a book on Charles Manson and
what was the knowledge nugget about the?
Oh, what?
What was the knowledge nugget about the MI whatever?
Oh, MK Ultra.
Yeah.
Well, I just thought you could take that subject. One knowledge nugget would be that they used to give it to people without their knowledge.
This is LSD.
Yes. Yeah, and they used to give it to prisoners, and that Whitey Bulger supposedly, when he was in prison, he signed up for a program that was CIA sanctioned. Oh, it was, they call it like some psychological thing, but they gave Whitey Bulger acid in prison. There's a knowledge nugget. Yeah.
Just recently.
No, not recently, but when he was in prison during the whole MK Ultra, the late 50s, he was probably one of the people that did take acid, because he did spend some time in prison around that time. Yeah, they used to get prostitutes to bring over mafiosa with a hotel room with a two-way mirror, and they'd try to see if the prostitute could get some information from the mafiosa guy while he's on acid. They wanted to see if it was like a truth serum, or if they could control the guy or do what they wanted,
Yeah, I knew that was the earliest development of LSD, right? They tried to...
Right, the CIA had a hold of LSD before the hippies did, before it got on the market,
So they could have changed the world.
They did, I think. I don't know. I think the CIA kind of helped it get into the public because they wanted to see what was going to happen, probably. I mean, it was one way to destroy the anti-war movement, just get them all high and fucked up, and they'll forget about the Vietnam War, I mean.
Do you still do hallucinogenic drugs?
Occasionally, I'm still interested in it.
Like, how old are you now? Because I know narcotic exploration was kind of your thing for a while.
Well, yeah, but I mean, everyone, I guess...
And it was mine as well.
Right, but I mean, I got into it, I think, because I saw Bill Hicks on stage. And, I mean, I'd taken it in high school. I mean, we all did. You took it in high school,
I didn't take it until I was 19.
Oh.
I did it with people I didn't know in an apartment complex in Jacksonville, Florida.
Uh-huh.
And it wasn't very enjoyable.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't do it until many years later.
Right.
When someone gave me some pure LSD on sugar cubes.
Right,
And I was living in the Wall Street area of Manhattan.
Oh, really?
Before 9/11, and no one lived down there at the time. And it was very enjoyable.
Yeah.
I used to rollerblade on acid among the...
Oh, really? What year was this?
98 to 2000.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Gave me like 10 sugar cubes with
man.
this LSD on it. And I would usually just do half of one. And put it in a tea. So I stretched it out. And then also I would rollerblade down in
I can't believe you didn't have long hair in '96, did you?
No.
Okay.
I had cut the hair
Okay.
in '97 after the sitcom.
Tom Rhodes on acid in New York on rollerblades.
Going around the skyscrapers, in Lower Manhattan.
Yeah,
like the World. I would skate over to the World Trade Center. I would go. You could go there, and there would be like one security guard,
right?
And then I'd skate down Broadway, and there'd be like maybe one taxi that you would see. It was a ghost town down there.
Right.
Now it's more built up and people live there, but 98, 99, no one was living down there. I felt like Batman when I would go home from the clubs.
Well, I mean, my experimentation was more...
And there's also the Native American Museum.
Where?
In the Wall Street area.
Oh, yeah?
And they've got statues in front, and I would climb on the Native American statues if I wasn't doing the rollerblade thing. So, there you go. That's my acid history.
Oh, my God. Mine wasn't... It's like I probably have more of a reputation than I do. Most of it was... When I was living in Seattle, there's a lot of used bookstores, and so I probably read more about drugs than I actually took drugs. So I was just reading every book I could find on the 60s, LSD, hallucinogens. Then that led me to a bunch of books on the brain. So I was into that for a while, which led me to books on Buddhism and mysticism. And so, but yeah, I've always been interested in mysticism and I've always meditated. So that's why I never really had a drinking problem, because like there are times when I drank every day, but I mean everyone thinks that I'm drunk all the time because of the movie, The Unbookables, which actually most of the time I'm at home reading or writing and or meditating. But when I go out and party like Panamint, or if I go over Doug's or something, or
Panamint was the desert part.
yeah. I mean, I'm drinking because I'm hanging out with my buddies, but I don't drink all the time. I mean, but I also don't go to AA. I haven't quit drinking completely because, you know, I want to have fun occasionally.
There's no shame in being who you want to be.
Right. So, that's a whole nother thing, the mysticism thing.
So let's get back to the books. Are you still a big reader?
Yeah, like the last book I read was this, not so much. I'm more on the internet now than I am reading actual books, but the last book I read was this book about Charles Manson and the CIA, and I can't remember the guy's name. We can probably look it up, but that was a pretty interesting book, and it was not a conspiracy book. This guy's a real journalist.
So what did you get out of it?
A lot of history. He interviews Bugliosi, the guy that wrote Helter Skelter, and he finds out a bunch of mistakes that were in Helter Skelter that he found out that either Bugliosi fudged the truth or purposely kept certain things out of the trial. And it's amazing the kind of shit they didn't want people to know. It's a really good book.
Like what?
I don't think a lot of people know that they went down to try to arrest him. There was people that were watching that group even before the murders happened. That group was under surveillance anyway, and they arrested him. I think they arrested him before the murders, and then they let him all go. And then the murders happened, and they were, we can't figure out who did it, and they finally arrested him 2 months after the murders. You know, everyone was like, why can't you find these people? What's the problem? Some of them were in jail at the time, some weren't. But it's just, I'd have to, I don't really, people, I got enough as it, I get.
Did you see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Yes, I did see that.
That's pretty great. I like the fantasy revenge fantasies.
It was a little
Tarantino.
Yeah, it wasn't one of his best. I didn't really like it all.
I
wish it was more. It had more in there about Manson, actually. But
it was worth it just to see the recreations of that period in Los Angeles history.
Yes, it was good.
And I lived by Fairfax, and I was walking on Fairfax one day when it was lined with all these cars from the 60s.
Oh, so you were there when
they were filming a shot.
Uh-huh.
So I liked the recreation, and then when that, as opposed to violence as I am, I couldn't help but giggle when
Squeaky Fromm got
when he lights her up with the flamethrower.
Oh, right. I see. I kind of closed my eyes when he was pounding her head into that. I just couldn't take it.
Yeah.
I mean,
the cartoonish violence.
Some violence, I just have to close my eyes. I mean, and I'll tell you the story.
I closed my eyes during the Joker a few times.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the whole mental illness thing.
Oh, yeah. I haven't seen the Joker yet. Yeah, but I didn't used to be like that. I mean,
squeamish.
Yes, yeah, and that whole squeamish thing happened, and I can tell that story.
Tell it.
Too. Well, I was studying mysticism, and I was meditating. I was studying Buddhism. I was down at bookstores all the time. I probably read every book on Buddhism off any bookshelf you can find. And finally, I was like, "Fuck it! I'm just gonna go to a Buddhist monastery, right?" And I go to this Buddhist monastery, which I kind of I got from Ram Dass in the back of one of Ram Dass's books. He's got a whole list of places you can call and you can go, and they're retreats, right? So I found a couple Buddhist places. I went to one for 2 weeks, and then I went to this other one where there was no chanting, there was no idols, there was just, you do this breathing exercise, and you kind of observe your sensations, and you have to sit there for an hour. And actually, you meditate like 8 hours a day. So I was either meditating 8 hours a day or 5 hours a day on nothingness, right? Which is hard to do because you gotta learn how to. It took me about 2 weeks to figure it out, and finally it kind of like, oh my God, I'm doing it, you know? Because when you first start doing it, it's kind of like you're riding a skateboard. You know, right when you start riding the skateboard, you're like, oh my God, I'm riding the skateboard, and then you fall off the skateboard because you're conscious of riding it. You should just not think, and you just ride the goddamn skateboard, right? So I'm there for like 2 months, and I'm not really thinking, you know, I'm like, this is cool. I'm in Buddhism, I'm meditating, blah, blah, blah. And then I kind of get, I want to get back into comedy, and I want to drink a beer. You know, you couldn't masturbate there. You know, it's just like I wanted to have
in the
sex.
monastery?
Right. You have to follow these rules, like no masturbation. You only eat one meal a day, right? You don't look at anyone. You don't talk to anyone. You don't read any books. You don't watch any TV. You're either meditating or you're sleeping, right? That's it. And so you're stuck with yourself. You're stuck with your own mind, right? And if you don't figure out how to calm your mind, it's going to be nothing but boredom and bullshit, right? But after a while, you figure out, oh my gosh, you know, this is my mind. I can do whatever I want with it, right? So I tell the teacher, I go, look, dude, I gotta go. You know, this is like, it's too much for me. I gotta go back into society, and I gotta go home and start doing comedy again. And he goes, okay, I just want to warn you, you're gonna be very sensitive when you get back into regular society, right? Just be careful. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm a comic, you know, and I've taken acid, you know. I'm like, I'm not sensitive. I'm a comic, you know. What are you talking about? So anyway, I get in this guy's car, and he's driving back to San Francisco, right? And so I mean, we get in the car, we leave this. It's a beautiful place. It's just like you're in nature for 2 months straight, meditating 5-8 hours a day. We get in his car, and he pulls over to a gas station to get something, you know. I walk in there, and I see Time Magazine had a picture of, what's his name? The guy that ate the people, the mass murderer.
Dahmer?
Yes, Dahmer. On the front cover of Time Magazine, Dahmer had just been killed in jail and bludgeoned to death, right? I started bawling, crying. I was completely sober, you know, not on acid. Just got out of the monastery. I felt so sorry for the guy because they killed him in jail. He's a monster, you know what I mean? So I'm like, that was weird. I could get back home. First of all, I can't drink. I didn't feel like drinking. You know, I tried to have sex with my wife, right? I couldn't even have sex because I felt like a goddamn animal, right? So she's like, well, let's just go to a movie. We go to a movie. It's got violence in it. I'm like, I can't fucking take this. Ever since I've been to that monastery, I can't watch a violent movie. Now, the only time I can watch a violent movie is if I'm drunk. Because when I like, you know, I see something that's really violent, it just turns my stomach. And I never had that before I went to the monastery. I never noticed that. Now it just bothers me. Like, you know what I mean? So, I mean, it will really alter your consciousness. I mean, especially you do something like that for 2 months straight, you know, you're going to crack open a few things. I mean, God knows what I did to my brain. Anyway, I just thought I'd tell that story.
No, it's a good story.
Yeah,
no,
so
I'm talking about laughing at Tarantino's violence.
Well,
I don't know if my laughter's my nervous reaction.
Well, yeah, I mean, that would be a reaction. I mean, you have to laugh because you can't really...
It's just so cartoonish.
Right, but see, that was the other thing. It took me a whole year to actually watch a movie because when I was watching the movie, right after I got out of the monastery, I was like, this is fake. These people are acting. This is not real.
Yeah.
You know, I had just as much fun looking at a tree than I did watching a movie. I mean, it just kind of bored me, right? So I really couldn't really watch a movie for like a year after that monastery. I couldn't really drink at all after a year. I couldn't eat meat, just meat turned my stomach. I couldn't even think about it.
So how long ago was that?
That was like, I think that was back in, I want to say 1997 or 8. 1990.
So you're back eating meat and drinking?
Yeah, I mean, I was a vegetarian for like 7 years, but I'm back to eating meat. I drink occasionally, probably drink once a month. I don't drink every day. My girlfriend eats meat, so I buy it for her, but I mean, if it was up to me, if I was living alone, I probably wouldn't eat it, I mean, my dogs eat meat, so I have to deal with it. It's just one of those things.
So tell me about the book that you wrote.
Oh,
the Greyhound Diaries?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So you took Greyhound bus and kept a diary.
Yes. I was.
It's fascinating to me because I used to take Greyhound all the time when I first started, and one of my best jokes. It was when I first. I felt like I started to write. It was the first joke I had ever written that I thought, oh, that's a real quality joke, and it came from my experience of taking Greyhound. I don't know if you remember this joke I used to do, but it was I'm a young man, but I've seen a lot of things. I saw a woman give birth. I saw the miracle of birth. I saw a man punch a nun right in the face. Pow! I saw a little bitty baby chug-a-lugging a tall boy of malt liquor. Man, I hate taking Greyhound.
Right.
That was the joke.
Right. Do you still do it?
No. That was like early Tom Rhodes.
Right.
But like that was when I was like, oh shit, that was when I like started to write good jokes because it was from my life. I was fucking taking Greyhound buses and I had seen all this horrendous shit. Well, so I just exaggerated what I had seen and that was like when I felt like I wrote a joke of quality.
Yeah, it's a funny joke. I just the whole writing the book thing was another mystical, weird thing that happened in my life. Like, after I got out of the monastery, I was still reading, books about, like, say, out-of-body experience, which I would never have read one of those books, before I went to the monastery. But then I had this other book, and it was about Tantra. And it was just a simple, the author explained it in the simplest way. It's like tantric sex is basically just this. You do these many strokes, and then you do one long stroke. The male holds back his semen, and he tries to make the woman come. If the woman comes, the man gets some kind of energy from that. And so that was just in the back of my head, I was, So I'm on the road, and I go to Omaha. I meet this girl. And just a lot of this stuff that happens, unexplained phenomena, happens when you're just fucking around with it, when you're not really trying to do it, right? So I end up in bed with this woman. I was like, oh yeah, I read that book. There's that one thing. I'm going to try that. We're just going to do that. Pull, yeah. And so I start doing this tantric sex thing with this girl, right? And she's loving it. She doesn't know what it is. And of course she comes like fucking crazy. And I was like, "Do you like that?" She's like, "Yeah." So I was like, "Let's keep doing this." And she came back the next night and the night after, and we did it for like 3 nights straight, where I was holding back my orgasm, right? And I was trying to do what was in this book, right? So anyway, right when I get done with that week, I go back on the bus. I'm in a bookstore. I just out of nowhere pick up this empty diary. And I start writing that book, and I wrote half that book just within 1 week. I had this intense creative energy that just came out of nowhere. And by the time, at the end of the week, I was like, oh, I got a book here. This is what I'll do. I'll write this book first person while I'm on the bus, like I'm experiencing it, just like, Hunter S. Thompson, where he's in the story itself. And so then just whenever I rode the bus, I just finished the book. And when I finished the book, I published it myself But yeah, that's one of those weird things. And when I look back, I was always like, man, I started that book right after I did that tantric sex with that girl. I think I've
So were you living in Seattle at the time?
Yeah, I was living in Seattle.
So you're taking a bus around the Northwest.
No, this was, this like, we string about 3 weeks together. So it was like probably a Seattle to Idaho, Idaho to Montana, then Montana to Omaha, and then Omaha to Kansas, and then I'd fly back to Seattle. So that's after I've probably told this story before on a podcast, but yeah, that's how I wrote that Greyhound Diary. So it's not really me making fun of people on the bus. I mean, I'm on the bus too, so I'm there with everybody else, and I'm just, anyway.
Well, it's interesting because I think it's a great topic for a book to, because it's a real.
All that stuff really happened.
It's a real look at true America, like people who can't afford to travel by air, and there's just a lot of different stages of humanity.
Yeah,
that you see on the Greyhound bus.
Yeah,
Years ago, when I was in London, I did this BBC radio interview, and one of the other guests on the show was this woman named Irma Kurtz, and she was American, but she had lived in England she was an older woman, and she had like 70. She had written a book. She was promoting it on the show, and I have a copy of it. She gave it to me, and she had traveled all over America on a Greyhound bus, and just wrote about the people that she met.
Oh, really?
And I thought, well, that's a fascinating concept, but it was more. It felt like I would be interested to hear your Greyhound bus journeys.
Well, it's kind of.
I think it's more.
I tried to make it funny.
Well, I think you're more probably relatable to the people on the bus than this upper crust woman
I started thinking
who had lived in England and kind of was looking down her her nose at the people.
Well, I kind of got it when I started looking at all the projects that I've done, like the Greyhound Diary and the Unbookables, and then I created this podcast where it was the Drunk Idiots podcast, because I had a neighbor that was this guy on disability who was a complete alcoholic that drank every day, and he was also a cross-dresser. And so I lived right next door to him, and so I started doing this podcast. And now it's like when I look at all my projects that I've done, I'm like this Tom Waits of comedy, where all of it is like underclass, kind of like white trash comedy. You know what I mean? It's just like that's how I could define myself as. That's that white trash comedian who does all this. All this stuff is like what a poor comic would do. I don't know. That probably sounds arrogant when I compare myself to Tom Waits, but I was just thinking that he's always got songs about homeless people and
being in the being among the colorful
right
not low life people, but just like
they're definitely not rich.
The lower economic hard edge people.
Right. So my next project, I'd like it to be something like the Unbookables or the Greyhound Diary or my Drunk Idiots podcast, because I loved
What was the most entertaining situation you saw riding the Greyhound bus, or memorable person?
There was this guy attacked the bus driver while we're on the bus going 70 miles an hour. And the funny thing was, he had a camouflage jacket on. He looked like he was like FARC. He looked like he was a Sandinista, right? And we were on this bus that just smelled horrendous. Sometimes if they don't clean out that bus.
The back toilet, Jesus Christ, you wouldn't want to sit in. I was on a few of those.
Right, so the whole half of the bus smelled like shit and piss. I'm not kidding, right? And he was in the back of the bus. And out of nowhere, we're going on the highway 70 miles an hour. Out of nowhere, this guy just gets up, walks to the front. He starts telling the bus driver, let him off. And the bus driver's like, I can't let you off on the side of the highway. It's against, I swear to God, he goes, it's against corporate policy. And this guy just grabs his hair and starts pounding on his head while we're on the bus. I mean, the bus just...
driving.
Right, I'm sitting there, the bus just lurches sideways, and it's almost tipped over. And somehow the bus driver gets the bus pulled over, and he gets back up, and they're fighting it out, and they have to break him apart. The people up front, in the front of the bus, break him apart, and the driver is pissed, and he's like screaming at the top of his lungs. He's like, you just put... I swear to God, he's actually said this. He goes, you just put 47 people's lives in danger. That's attempted murder. And now we're going to be late. I mean, I just fucking wrote that down. I'm like, that's the funniest fucking thing I've ever... because I was like, dude, I've been on this bus 4 days. It's always been late. There's never been a time when this bus has been on time. And so they call the cops and they drag him off, and so I write the whole story. That's in the book. Yeah. But I just don't want people to think I'm punching down on, because this book, I mean, I'm there riding the bus with everybody else.
Well, what enlightenment did you gain? What epiphanies?
You just got to read the book. I'm not going to give away the ending. I mean, but it's...
I don't want to give away the ending, but I mean, how were you illuminated by this experience that you wanted to write a book about it?
I don't know.
Just thought it was a good premise?
Well, I guess I wanted it to be funny. I wanted it to... Actually, I wrote the book with this, around the same time I was studying the Tao Te Ching, so it was just written without thinking. Every time I wrote in that book, I did not think. I just wrote. And so, it made me a better writer. There's no real point to the book. There's no meaning, no...
Okay, well, how much did you, after you wrote it, how much editing and rewrite?
Oh, well, the editing was interesting. I had read some biography about Bruce Springsteen, and he was talking about when he made Darkness at the Edge of Town. He wrote 70 songs or something. He wrote some ungodly number of songs, and only 10 of them ended up on the album. So he wrote 5 or 6 times as many songs as what ended up on the album. So he edited a whole bunch of shit out, and he only put the best of the best.
Yeah.
So the book was about 200 pages, and so I gave it to a friend of mine, and I said, just put an X next to whichever paragraph you like, and just if there's a paragraph you don't like, just put a check mark or plus on one and a 0 on the other. And so he just kind of went through and he put an X on half of my paragraphs. And I give it to this other comic friend of mine. I was like, help me edit this book. Read this book. Tell me which parts are funny and which parts suck. And he went through and he took out about half of the book. And so the book ended up to be about 100 pages. I edited 50% of that book. So...
In Miles Davis's autobiography, Miles, he says it's not important what notes that you play. What's more important is the notes that you don't play, what you leave out.
Uh-huh.
I always thought
that was cool.
Genius.
Yeah, that is cool. I mean, so
trim the fat, baby.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with somebody else editing my stuff, or I'm a good editor myself. I mean, I'll write 10 tweets before I tweet one of them, This is, I'm like, it's not that funny, I'll actually try them out on my girlfriend, Brenda. I was like, what do you think of this, But...
Tell me about, you told me you've been having dreams about Bill Hicks.
Oh, right. That's
so he just comes to you in your dreams?
Oh, well, I always looked up to him, as a comedy kind of hero. This is before he became famous. I knew him when he was alive. I mean, you did too. Right?
I knew him, yeah.
And so
Beautiful man.
Yeah, I saw him on stage, and it was just like, oh my God, this is the best comedy I've ever seen in my life. So he was always kind of in the back of my mind as a hero, right? But I guess I didn't know it. So remember I told you I was at that monastery for 2 months, and at the end of each little session, we have these 10-day sessions where you cannot talk for 10 days. You can't look at anyone else for 10 days. You can't read anything. You got to follow all these rules, right? So there's...
So everybody's just walking around a courtyard and In long white robes?
Well, there's not much time to walk because you're either meditating or you're eating lunch or you're back meditating.
I think
or
you
you're
may have
sleeping.
mistaken this experience for jail.
No, it is jail. I mean, you
I
really
was meditating every day.
Right.
We
but
weren't
they're-
allowed to talk to others.
Right, but the jail disappears because everything's in the mind. So after one of these 10-day sessions, I had this intense dream about Bill Hicks. Like, he came to me in this dream, and I was awake in this dream. I was like, this wasn't a dream where, I'm in the dream, I wake up, and Bill Hicks comes to me and starts talking to me, about how, don't be afraid of death because we're reborn millions of times and we can come back and be comedians over and over again as many times as we want. And I was like, really? And it's like, yeah, pretty much. And I was like, man, that was intense. And so that's another thing that happened to me after I got out of the monastery was I started having all these Bill Hicks dreams. And so I kept a diary. I started writing them down because it was like a dream diary. And there were so many of them. Most of them were, whenever he would appear, I'd wake up in the dream and I'd like talk to him, and I would keep a diary of it and stuff like that. And
Does he give you advice? What happens in the
well,
dream?
one of the weirdest ones. This is so embarrassing that I'm telling this. I mean, just like, one of the weirdest ones that I had was, I was laying in bed around this time. I was meditating like an hour a day at least, and I was laying in bed and I hear this voice, and it's Bill, and I'm like, he goes, "What is it that you want?" And I kind of I look up, like I'm not really, I don't know if I'm dreaming or if this is real. I look up, and there's this light or whatever. I'm like, I don't know. I guess I just want some of your magic. I don't know why I said that. It sounds so silly and stupid. And then right after I said that, there was this whole white light just went over my entire body, like from top of my head to the bottom of my feet. And after that, I think it was around the same time as I won the San Francisco Comedy Competition.
You won the San Francisco Comedy Competition?
Yeah.
What year?
Like 1997.
Really?
Yeah, and then I got invited to the Just for Laughs festival, and then that's where I met Doug Stanhope at the Vail Festival. I had all this success in Seattle, and it was around the time I was meditating every day, and I was having these weird Bill Hicks dreams, and this is way before he became famous. I had no idea he was going to become famous, right? He was just my favorite comic. And I kept that diary, and yeah, that's kind of embarrassing that I was such a big fan of his,
So what does he tell you in the dream?
Well, actually, one of the reasons why I first went to the monastery was after Bill Hicks died. Like, right when Bill Hicks died, I flipped out, and I wanted to go to a monastery for a long time anyway, and I was screaming at my wife. I was like, why won't you let me go to this monastery? She's like, you're going to leave me. You're going to go on a spiritual quest and never come back. I'm like, this place is only, you stay there 2 months or 10 days or whatever. And so the first time I went is right after Bill died, and I went for 10 days, and I came back, And so that's actually, and so I guess maybe the reason why he became like this hero is because I never had a guru or anything. In my reality, my only, the person I looked up to was Bill Hicks. So that was like my everybody's got to have something that they look up to.
Yeah, man, but this could be your next book. And I love the film True Romance. And Christian Slater, the character Clarence, loves Elvis. And so Elvis keeps appearing to him throughout the movie in the bathroom. You never see his face, but the movie starts out where he's talking about Elvis, and Elvis is his hero, and he would fuck Elvis.
So it doesn't you don't think it's a dumb idea?
I think it's a brilliant idea.
Okay.
So Elvis appears to him in all these like difficult circumstances in what he's going through, and it's and then he says to him at the end, "I like you, Clarence. Always have, always will." And it's like such a cool, Elvis thing to say.
Right. It is, yeah.
So I picture Bill Hicks coming to you.
Mm-hmm.
I like you, James. Always have, always will.
Right, because you got to realize that
James, you need to drop the thing about Albertson Supermarket.
Too hacky.
You need to highlight your Jiffy Lube bit, or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it gets even weirder than that because I actually started doing improv on stage because I was so obsessed with Bill. When I got invited to the Just for Laughs festival, it was like a year after Bill had died, and they had a special show for him, like in remembrance of Bill, and everyone was there. And
I think Bill died in '94, and then
92.
Early.
I think it was like 90,
and you said you went
94.
to the monastery.
Was it 90?
Early,
yeah, maybe I went to the monastery.
Earlier, you went into the monastery at 97. There's kind of like a 5-year sliding scale on these stories.
Right. But I mean, I went to a monastery for just 10 days, and that was not. It wasn't the intense 2 months time. You know, the 2 month time was when it was intense. Okay. 10 days was not enough for anything to really happen.
So tell us more about these Bill Hicks dreams.
Oh, so what was I going to say? It gets even weirder than that.
Let's not haggle over details.
Oh, okay. So I met the guy that writes for the New Yorker that wrote the Bill Hicks story that kind of made him famous. And I was like, oh, here's the guy. What am I going to ask him? And so I asked him, I said, what was Bill Hicks's creative process? Like, how did he write jokes? You know, and the guy looks at me, he goes, Bill Hicks wrote on stage. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, he didn't have a notebook. He didn't write jokes down in a notebook. And I was like, you mean he just went on stage and just talked off the top of his head? He's like, yes. And that's made so much sense to me because that's kind of how I see Richard Pryor, because I'd listened to a lot of his albums where it just seems like he's just talking off the top of his head, and I'd read the Lenny Bruce biographies, and that's all Lenny Bruce did. So that's when I went back to Seattle. I started going to open mic night, and I started just talking off the top of my head because you can't get fired on open mic night, you know.
Right.
And so they'd put me up whenever I showed up. You know, here's a headliner. He's going to do some time, try something. And so, so every Monday and Tuesday, I'd go on and I'd just talk off the top of my head. I'd put all my jokes aside because I used to do my jokes like a robot. I'm like, fuck that. I'm going to learn improv. And so eventually I learned how to do it for an hour. I could just talk for an hour on stage and do very little material. And that's how I wrote my 2 CDs. All the jokes in my CDs I wrote on stage.
Cool. Okay. Well, I like that attitude and working it out like that, and that was his approach to writing material. But I want to return to this one last time. You said that Bill Hicks keeps appearing to you in dreams.
Yeah.
So you said, so he asked you what you wanted, and you said, I want to be like you.
No, I never really said that.
Something like that. But I mean, is that the only thing? Because you said he keeps appearing to you.
Whenever something really, something in my life that's really intense that happens usually appears in the dream.
So it's like the Elvis in the True Romance. Yeah,
it is. It is kind of. I mean, I don't know what it is because I'm not saying this stuff exists or not. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is this is phenomenon of the mind. These are things that happen in dreams. Because I'm not talking about if God exists or if there's an afterlife or people.
But you guys aren't playing ping pong. You're not hanging out.
I'm not worried about if it's real or not. You know what I mean? I only know how it affects me in my own existence.
Is he delivering nuggets of information to you?
I think it feels more like
comedy coaching.
It's been a while since I've had a Bill Hicks dream, but I do have the diary. I mean, I could read it again or write the book. I mean, I could just publish the book. You know, if people are interested. But but then it just got it. The weirdest part was when we signed the contract for the Unbookables. And the director signed the contract on Bill Hicks's birthday. So that was when it was just got creepy. Like the hair on the back of my neck stood up, you know. It's like, oh my gosh, here it is again.
Okay, well, we don't have too much time left because I got to go to the show soon.
Right.
So let's talk about Kansas City. You are Mr. Kansas City.
I started here, yeah.
And you're from this area?
Yes, yeah. I'm from Johnson County, yeah. Just used to live just not very far from here.
why have you been? What is it about Kansas? What should the rest of the world know about Kansas City?
Oh, I don't know. I'm kind of we got Google Fiber. I guess it's the Midwest and people are nice here. I don't know. I don't really like it. I liked Seattle. I mean, I like it because it's my hometown, but I mean, I like Seattle much better. You know, it's just a much better city. I haven't been there in a while, but this is where I was born and raised. So, but I don't like doing comedy here. My jokes always work better in Seattle than they do in Kansas City.
Okay.
You know.
Charlie Parker is from here.
Oh, really?
I remember I went to Charlie Parker's grave years ago when I first started my. I have this thing in my travels. I like to go to graves of people
really?
I admire,
Uh-huh.
and his was one of the first ones that I went to.
Uh-huh.
Harry Truman is from Independence. I wrote this joke on stage last night. There was a guy from Independence, and I said, "Oh, you're from Independence?" Harry S. Truman is from Independence. He dropped 2 nuclear bombs on Japan. I need to go to Independence. I wanted to send a few of my Japanese friends postcards.
Oh, jeez.
That was terrible.
Yeah.
It's funnier last night.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So are there any other valuable pieces of information, knowledge nuggets that you'd like to delight?
For comedy or just for life? Just anything?
Either. No, for life. Or anything.
I think people are taking religion too seriously nowadays, and they should probably don't be too afraid to go to the bookstore and read up on some of this mysticism, and don't really bother yourself with if there's an afterlife or not, or if God exists or not. You know, there's some cool ideas in ancient mysticism and religion that I have actually personally experienced for myself. And, you know, I think it's helped my stand-up comedy, actually. One of my favorite books is the Tao Te Ching. And I studied that book just for years. So I love that book so much. And I felt like that was the best religion for a comedian is the Tao Te Ching.
In what way?
Well, first of all, it gets you to start acting naturally. One of the main themes in the Tao Te Ching is naturalness. Spontaneity is also a big theme. Detachment. Also, the second chapter in the Tao Te Ching is about how when people see some things as beautiful, other things become ugly. When people see some things as good, other things become bad. Being and non-being create each other. Difficult and easy support each other. Long and short define each other. High and low depend on each other. All these opposites come together, and most people are constantly going through life looking at everything as this is good, that's bad. This is good, that's bad. If you can stop this discriminating mind of constantly looking at this is, that's one thing it taught me how to do is stop looking at the world as good and bad and just be natural. Just think without trying to think. Do a joke without trying to do a joke. Actually, jokes are much funnier when it sounds like you're not doing a joke. That's when it sounds the funniest, But if it sounds like you're up there doing a joke, it just sounds contrived. It doesn't sound natural.
What joke have you written that you're the most proud of?
I like my CIA joke, but I think this sounds really stupid, but I like my weather joke, which is I wrote that joke on stage from beginning to end, where I was on stage and I just started talking. At the time, I was reading Noam Chomsky, and I was thinking about how I wanted to write a joke about the mainstream media. And so I just was on stage and I just went off on the local news and how they talk about the weather. And, even though like 900 people are dead, it's going to be 64 degrees. And so anyway, I wrote that joke from beginning to end. and I knew it was going to work. And basically, I wrote that joke on stage. It was just, and after I got done saying it, I knew how to say it. I knew how to do it, and I probably did that joke for like 2 years, and it just came out of nowhere. It was fun creating it because it was just, I don't know who said it. I don't think I said it. It was just one of those things that was just in the air, and I just kind of climbed aboard, And a lot of people say it's a hacky joke, but it's more of a joke on my attitude and how I say it, not so much what the joke is.
I don't understand what the joke is.
Well, it's basically, it's a rant on the weather, I've got a window, he'd have to listen to my CD. I couldn't even reproduce it on a podcast.
What is the greatest advice you've ever been given as a comedian?
The greatest advice as a comedian, probably he wrote on stage when I found out that I wasn't actually talking to Hicks, but I was talking to that guy that
the New Yorker, right?
Right. After I started doing improv on stage, that was pretty good advice because that led me down paths, that were just like I became a much better comic when I learned how to do that. But I remember other advice like the 7-second rule. You've never heard of the 7-second rule? I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, look at your watch. Make sure your setup isn't longer than 7 seconds. You're up there and you're doing a setup and it's 30 seconds. So I used to look at my watch and I used to take out as many words as I could to write the setup to get to the punchline within 7 to 10 seconds. And so some headliner gave me that advice in the green room and I started doing it and I became a much better joke writer.
Cool. Well, James, I've known you for at least 25 years.
I know, it's been a
really
long time.
And I'm glad to have you on my podcast. I'm
flattered.
I promise that I will never throw another tennis ball at your head.
Yeah.
And
don't worry about that. I don't know if I'm what this.
But you're a good guy, man. And in closing, is there any words of wisdom or advice that you'd like to give to the people of the earth?
I don't know. I guess.
What have you learned from your life experience? I got divorced a few months ago. You were divorced, right?
Right. Yeah.
You got a lot of world experience.
Well,
you've done a lot of hallucinogenic drugs.
Right. I would say
you
what I've learned
Greyhound.
is that this world that we live in is impermanent and is constantly changing, so it's not real. It's an illusion. And the only thing that's real is what's going on inside your mind. So these things come and go. Like your girlfriend comes and goes. You have a wife for a while. She's gone. We're all going to die. Your parents are going to die. You're going to die. I'm going to die. We're all, all this thing that we see is just an illusion. So that's what I've been studying for. And to me, jokes kind of show that. They are the
end. And Bill Hicks says that at the end of Revelations. It's just
right.
A ride.
It's just a ride.
Yeah.
Right. I guess I kind of got into that before that turned into something. Because whenever I saw Bill, he didn't have that joke at the time. But I kind of got it from Buddhism, but it's just exactly like what he said, But we do get caught up in this world, and we don't detach ourselves enough. And I think comedy teaches people detachment. It teaches people how not to rely so much on rational. I think comedy is the antithesis of logic and rationality. It teaches you how to let go of your rational mind, because you can't be thinking logically all the time. It's not going to solve all your problems.
Amen, brother. All right, James. I got to run to the show, my brother.
Okay. All right, and it's good to be on your show. I'm just totally flattered.
Thanks for being here. It's good. I haven't been in Kansas City in like 15 years, so it's good to finally come.
Yeah, once I heard you were coming.
I used to play here all the time.
Yes, and I can't wait to see your show tonight.
Now I'm back. All right, my brother.
All right.
Long may you run, brother.
All right, thanks.
Long may you run.
Tom Rhodes, you're a funny man. Tom Rhodes, you're an international comedian. Tom Rhodes, karate kick, baby, oh yeah. Tom Rhodes, you're a groovy dude. You go all around the world, telling telling jokes to all of the people. You are an international comedian. You're funny to everybody in every single country in the world. Tom Rhodes, I like you very much. I think you're talented and very wonderful. Tom Rhodes, you're the best guy in the world. I wanna be your friend, you should call me sometime. Here is my phone number, 603-644-0048. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Tom Rhodes, you're an international comedic sensation. Tom Rhodes, I like to listen to your podcast. Tom Rhodes, you're the best man to ever walk on the earth.